We got you back here on a Monday. Of course, the big drama over the weekend superseded everything, and that was the College Football Committee, of course, with their Final Four. You've got Michigan 1 taking on Bama 4, and then, of course, you've got Texas taking on Washington. To talk about that, one of the best doing it, Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports national college football writer at Dennis Dodd CBS. I know he's traveling, so we do appreciate a few minutes today. And it was almost like the committee for 10 years or so had gotten away unscathed, had dodged some bullets in the past. And then this year, kind of a confluence, a storm, the perfect storm led to this weekend. And, of course, the reaction has been wild. I'd love to hear your take on it, Dennis.
I thought it was an abomination. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. We've been told one thing for the last 25 years. Since the BCS started. If you're a major conference champion, you're undefeated, you're in. There are no parameters. There's nothing in there about losing healthy players. I understand there's language in the protocol of the CFP about it. But let's talk about this. In 1998, when the BCS debuted, Florida State was deemed good enough to play for a national champion. Florida State was deemed good enough to play for a national championship at the backup quarterback. They didn't win, but they certainly made it via the computers. In 2014, when this thing started, Cardale Jones was the third-string quarterback for Ohio State, who led them to a Big Ten championship. So that, to me, is hypocritical. So the only thing I'm left with is, well, they didn't look good enough. And I was stunned by a quote in the ESPN story today, ESPN.com, where one anonymous committee member said, we just didn't think they could win a national championship. Well, isn't that a something subjective, especially when you've got 30 days, a month, to get your backup quarterback healthy. Apparently he was. Tate Rodemaker was going to be healthy and give him a shot at it. I thought it was completely misdirected. Oh, and by the way, Alabama lost the game. Alabama played a game with a third-string quarterback. They looked terrible doing it. They won by double digits. Nobody seems to remember UCF. Nobody seems to remember Auburn, last play of the game. And they certainly don't remember the Texas loss. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous.
I thought, Dennis, you brought up a couple of great points there. I don't understand how the Auburn game is just absolved from Alabama's resume.
Right.
I mean, 4th and 30, give them credit for the miracle, but it was a kick six part 2. And then let's go back. You mentioned the South Florida game where they barely win with Buckner and Simpson in there and a quarterback. But the fact that Florida State, and I get it was with Jordan Travis in week 1, was thoroughly more dominant against the common opponent in LSU than the Crimson Tide were against LSU. I mean, to me, if you're Florida State at this point in time going forward, you sit there and say, well, what are we doing? What are we playing for? I don't understand how you could just catapult the team based on brand. And look, I went to Ohio State. I thought in 2014, I thought TCU should have been in there. I mean, they just seem like they make up their criteria as they go week by week to fit the narrative. And what is your perspective as a guy who's covered this for so long? Is this just simply Alabama's got more cachet?
Well, I think brand has something to do with it. But look, we're talking about Florida State, a national program with multiple national championships. We're not deciding between Alabama and TCU or Cincinnati or somebody like that, or UNLV, let's put it that way. This is Florida State. They're not a second-level program. And to have them left out like that, I think this story has moved on. This will never happen again like this because we're going to 12, so the only argument will be about seeding and buys and who's 13 and who's 12. I think the next step to this is we need transparency in this process. ESPN just did a story quoting anonymous committee members. The last time I checked, they weren't even allowed to talk to the media at all while they were committee members. We need to see their votes. Maybe not every week, but maybe. And if they're too scared to do it and afraid of social media trolls, then let somebody else do it. I think they have this secret process, which, by the way, is the most clandestine and least transparent, I think, in the history of sports right now. AP releases their votes. The voters are allowed to tell people who they voted for. At the end of the year, the coaches for years wouldn't release their votes. They do at the end of the season. It just looks like Olympic figure skating, where nobody has to show their mask. That's what bothers me the most now that this story has moved on.
The great Dennis Dodd joining us, CBS Sports. You used the word abomination. I don't think you're wrong. Also, Dennis on Saturday wrote about league title games never being important again as we go to 12. I can hear the frustration, so I just want to zoom out and ask you the state of the sport. Where are you with it right now? The transfer portal, the playoff, where are you right now?
Well, not to mention that, we're pretty darn close to paying players or collective bargaining or the NCAA not running things, stuff like that. That's all in play, too, and that's why I'm in town. There's a National Football Foundation dinner tomorrow night, and then the Learfield Intercollegiate Forum is here at the Aria, and there's only about 3 times a year where everybody, all the stakeholders are under one roof. So that's some of the questions I'll be asking. The game endures. It hit me in the first year of NIL in 2021. The upheaval. On game day, guys, nothing changed. I don't care, and you don't care, if Shedeur Sanders drives a Maybach or has a gold watch. He's a hell of a player. I don't care if J.J. McCarthy, actually I do care because J.J. McCarthy gives all his NIL money to charity, or most of it. It's still Ohio State versus Michigan. They're still wearing those colors. And it will endure even through all this crap, all this realignment, everything else, the stuff we're talking about. The game continues to endure. And these players are still young adults. Their minds and bodies and brains are still forming. And the net result of that is some wild and wacky stuff, mostly pleasurable. 4th and 31 is great. This is great just to talk about. It may not be right, may not be fun, but this will go down historically as, I think a dark day, but certainly part of the lure of the sport, frankly.
Dennis, with the new 12-team playoff taking place and with Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC, does the college football playoff next year become the the Big Ten SEC Challenge plus potentially Florida State and Clemson?
I will give you some numbers that we had researched earlier in the season. We went back 9 years and just took it as a 12-team playoff, put the teams in. In the last 9 years, the SEC and Big Ten would have averaged, it's just an average, 7.3 out of 12 every year. There were a couple of years there where they would have had 9 in each, with only 3 at-large spots. You know what that means? That means in any given year, if those numbers hold, the remaining 100 teams in FBS will get 4.7 spots on average in the playoff. I don't want to hear about Liberty or SMU. You know where those spots are going to go to? Mostly to the SEC and the Big Ten. Big 12 will be in there. The ACC will be in there. But this is another chapter in those two leagues taking over the earth. Look, it was probably inevitable anyway. That's where the TVs, that's where the advertisers want their money to go. We've just seen it evolving, frankly, for decades. But that's going to be the reality of it. You're going to see a lot of rematches. I'm not even saying that's bad. There would have been a rematch I thought I saw in the 12 projected for this year, I think in the first round. I can't remember, maybe Ohio State, Ole Miss, or something like that. But there's going to be a lot of rematches. We're not going to get what we saw Saturday. Again, it's just all going to be for seeding and buys, and that's that.
Dennis, I know it's a busy time. You gave us exactly what we needed today, so thank you. Of course, you can find Dennis Dodd on Twitter at DennisDoddCBS. Read him at CBS Sports. Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, bye.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.